We're bringing back Matthew. Him from Ohio has a question about the brain as it relates to gender. So, Matthew, you are on. Welcome back.
Hey, Dr. Ben. Hey, Luxander. How are you guys doing?
Oh, so awesome. We're so ready. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I am all right. So, as you guys have been saying, I've called a couple of times here and there. And somewhere in the fray, we got to the point about gender and sex being in the brain. And I think Luxander was saying that it's in the brain. And Dr. Ben was saying that it's not. And I kind of find myself agreeing with Luxander. So I just kind of want to clarify some things with that and kind of see where we are on that.
Hold on. I never said that it's not in the brain. I just don't, there's a difference between like psychology and an identity versus a physical, like anatomical feature, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think gender is anatomically neurological. It's an emergent property of like
consciousness,
your identity and your consciousness. Yeah, it's more related to psychology than it is to neurology, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it seems like gender is a little bit more complicated. So let's start off with sex then. Is that
they're both
that
complicated
neurological part of the brain? Pardon?
Yeah, they're both complicated. Sex is actually very complicated as well. But go for it. Well, let's talk about sex.
Yeah, let's just start off, I guess, with sex. Now, the sex, is that somewhere in the brain? And both of you guys can kind of give me your opinion. You don't have to just be one person. I want to know from the both of you guys.
I kind of want to ask. I kind of want to turn the question on you. Yes. Where do you think sex is, or what do you think sex is?
So, with the research I have done, that's why, and I'm doing research even talking to you guys.
Where did you do your? Curious as well. Where did you do your research? Where did you look for this information?
I think it's NIH. I think that's where my information comes from. National Health.
From what? Yeah. Okay. From what paper do you know?
Yeah.
Or what?
No, I don't. It wasn't a paper. Not paper or anything.
Was it a paper? Was it a study, or was it an opinion piece? Like, did somebody give opinions, or did they give?
I honestly couldn't tell you. So that's why I'm kind of.
So that's something you need to. So that's something you need to think of before you cite a source, because if you're going to use a source in an argument, I need it to be valid.
Where I kind of.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to ask. Because here's the problem. Here's the problem where we get into a lot of these discussions is people like to make this an opinion war of like, oh, but my opinion on sex is this, or mine is on this. But here's the problem. We're talking about like humans and their physiological functions and their genetics and their anatomy. All of that is very objective. And so I need some, if you're going to make assertions that are objective, I need you to bring objective data to the table. And so I think like I can bring better objective data to the table unless you give me a reason to accept yours. So
no, please.
What
please
objective?
Go ahead and bring your objective information to the table.
Well, because
I'll take what you got.
Well, yeah. So, and again, like going forward in this, like the next time you call in, because I know you call pretty frequently, think about that, like, and make sure that your research ahead of time is like good research and not just pull in whatever works for your point of view off the internet. But no, I do want to hear like what your thought on how are you defining sex?
Yeah, sex is just what the parts that you're born with, male, female, stuff like that.
So it's just anatomy. It's the parts you're born with. So are you talking about anatomy?
Anatomy
your sex?
and anatomy, and I'm assuming parts of the brain, like I said, the hypothalamus, and how that relates to sex and gender.
But so it's just anatomy. So you understand there's a difference between anatomy and physiology, right? Like while they're interrelated, structure and function are interrelated. Structure does not dictate The physiology.
Yeah, so physiology would be more of like the hips and how those are formed or whatever. And
No.
like
Physiology
genitalia.
is no anatomy. Hips are anatomy as well. Like no, physiology relates to hormones as well. Like the whole, the process, like the human process, essentially. And so I'm just trying I'm pinning you down a little bit because it's very easy to throw out a general statement of like sex is the parts you're born with, but like let's be specific because humans are also born with like a spleen and a gallbladder and a pancreas. Some people aren't born with certain parts of their body. And so that would be an anatomical difference. Does that put them in a bucket? Are we going to make societal standards based on who was born with 2 kidneys or who was born with 1 kidney? Can I go to a bathroom for people that have 2 kidneys? Can I kick people out who only have 1 kidney? Like what specific criteria are you using for sex?
Like for me, and like I said, this comes from I'll take it that it comes from an ignorant place. It's just the anatomy and brain function. So
okay,
we can go,
which anatomy?
We can go from your point of view.
Which anatomy?
Like the genitalia and the brain.
I love how you're just lumping the brain in with this as if it's like you acknowledge that it's a separate component, but trying to include it with these other things. What if I told you as well that internal and external anatomy are different and don't always align?
Okay.
So to me, and this leads into kind of my definition, to me, and I use the phrase to me, but really this is the medical definition, is that sex is multifactorial. It is a combination of multiple components, including internal anatomy, external anatomy, hormones, chromosomes, and genes on those chromosomes, because you can have genes that are supposed to be on one chromosome that aren't there and end up on other chromosomes. Gamete production, all of that relates to biological sex, if you will. So it's very inaccurate to lump all of that into just one thing. So that's where I'm coming from. I don't know if Luxander has a different perspective on that.
I mean, basically, yeah, I try my best to base my opinion on the evidence as much as possible. And the evidence seems to indicate that people can have a number of factors that are typically associated with one sex, mixed with other features that are typically associated with another sex. So yeah, like I might say it differently because I'm not a physician, but I would say it's like genitalia, chromosomes, hormones, secondary sex characteristics, and like your brain is part of it in the sense that it clearly informs how you move forward in your life with these things. Like, and I relate it to ice cream flavor because like Ben said, we don't have a way of like scanning the brain and seeing that it's a male or female brain. And there's no gay part of the brain and there's no trans part of the brain. We might see that the pleasure center of the brain lights up when you have the favorite ice cream, and maybe like a different part of the brain that's associated with disgust might light up when you have the ice cream that you really hate, or like mango sherbet or something. So like clearly the brain is involved because we can have very strong like neurological reactions or like emotional reactions to different things. And that's what the dysphoria diagnosis is about you, I think dysphoria is still basically defined as like a clinical degree of distress that you feel when you have like a gender incongruence, or if you feel like your body doesn't match what you feel like in your brain. And the way that I often relate this, and I don't know if this has necessarily been substantiated through evidence, but like I relate it to like phantom limb kind of thing. Like you have a brain body map where your brain has an expectation of what you're supposed to look like. And so that's kind of like the closest analogous relation that I can make when we're talking about other neurological conditions that impact your self awareness to this degree. So like when I say the brain is an organ of sex, I'm saying like the brain clearly informs how you view your body in a sexed or gendered dynamic, you know, and that is multifaceted as well, because sometimes you have like the social aspect where you don't like being called this or that, or, you know, like Josie says, like she always wanted to be in the kitchen with the women and she did not identify with any of the men in her family. And then there's the more internalized, like, oh, I should have been born with this other body type. Like it feels like I am existing in a body that is not right for me. And that internal incongruence causes a clinical level of distress. So I don't know. Does that help at all?
So you gave a point about the brain congruence and that phantom limb kind of idea. So is there a part of the brain that knows that you have male or female genitalia?
I mean, your brain, like you can perceive things and be aware of what you look like in context, I guess. Like, I mean, your whole brain, your consciousness, I guess, is like aware.
It's your awareness of self and aware of what body parts are connected to your nervous system. Like, yeah, you have like proprioception and sensory, like perception, like all of those things. You are aware of parts of your body through your brain, through like your sensory function. That's what sensory function is for. Matthew, I'm kind of curious where your point is going with this, because what it's kind of suggesting to me is that your knowledge of like anatomy and even psychology is very poor. And I think it'd be good for you to have like a class, like an entry level psychology class and like anatomy class. I think those would be a good starting place.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's probably been a long time since maybe the information has changed from my intro to psych and physiology, but I'm just trying to understand where you guys stand on your point of view. And I feel like we're getting somewhere. So please don't.
Yeah,
I'm lost in the sauce. I feel like I feel like you guys are helping me figure something out. And so we talked about the consciousness. Like if let's say someone, I guess you have proprioception too. So is that the only way, like awareness of proprioception? Like if a male knows he has male genitalia proprioceptively, is that the only way that the brain kind of tells him he has this genitalia, or are there other parts of the brain that cause them to know that they have that certain genitalia?
I'm very confused about that entire statement, because like your body has parts that are all connected and you can feel them, and your brain knows that they're there because of the neural network and because you can feel those things.
And also your eyes.
And and your eyes, and you can see them. That is separate from I want to have this thing attached to my body. And it's also separate from this thing that is attached to my body assigns me to this group in society and dictates how I live my life. Those are very different things, and they're all still related to the body that you have. But let me ask you a question, Matthew. Let me ask you a question. If you are one of the people that had gynecomastia, if you had high levels of estrogen in your system and you developed prominent breast tissue that you were not able to hide unless you really tried to cover up, how would you feel about that?
I'd probably get surgery, get it removed or something.
Yeah, so that is gender dysphoria. Cis people have gender dysphoria. And about 1/3 of adolescent males develop gynecomastia.
Yeah,
so
I agree
it's something that
people definitely can have gender dysphoria.
Yeah, and so I think what you're doing is you're connecting dots that don't necessarily immediately connect together. Like a lot of these things are related, and I think Luxander and I are trying to communicate that they are more indirectly related, or they're more distant apart in this web of variables. And I think you're trying to connect them immediately together. And you really can't do that as much. Like there's a lot more nuance and layers and depth to this conversation than like A plus B equals C. And sometimes we can dumb things down to get to an easier level to have it make sense. But a lot of this, you have to have kind of more of a depth of understanding to go through the whole spaghetti of genetics or the spaghetti of psychology and how all of these variables work together. And I get that you're trying to understand, and I think we're trying to meet you in the middle here, but I need you to understand a little bit that like it's very difficult to quickly arrive at the full complexity that you're trying to uncover.
And maybe it's just my brain, but I feel like you guys are doing a great job so far. I'm just trying to go further in the question.
Yeah.
Maybe the last question I asked was a little bit more complicated. I'm just thinking about what Luxander said about phantom limb, and that just makes me think of like you're aware, and let's say your eyes are not there. Obviously, you can't see the limb. Like if somebody has male genitalia, they're aware of their testicles, they're aware of the penis, they're like aware of these things, right? So I'm trying to think like, are they aware of it just because they see it and they feel it proprioceptively, or is there some other part that makes them aware of it as well?
I'm curious, why does this question, because you've kind of phrased this in different ways multiple times. What significance does this question have on your viewpoint? Like what is this question doing for your argument?
At this moment, it's just giving me extra knowledge so I can understand. So I'll tell you a little bit more about me. What I try to do is when I try to educate myself on something, whether I debate or whether I care about what someone believes or disbelieves or whatever, all that for me kind of goes away. And I try to just kind of empty my brain and kind of say, okay, what, and maybe because I learned that from being a Marine, but I ask like, okay, what is your point of view? How do you understand these things so that I can get a better understanding of you rather than trying to get my own understanding, and that way I can know where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, it feels like we've come a long way, Matthew, given that I'm pretty sure the first time I spoke to you, you were on the whole large gametes, small gametes thing. So we're clearly getting somewhere. I'm just not sure where that is exactly, or like how much further you need to go, because I think the crux of this is like the idea of like, you know, that question that Josie always comes back to is like, can a trans woman with a penis be a woman? If we can accept that medically the definition of sex is a bunch of different things that are clustered together in a roughly bimodal distribution, you know, like do you still like feel like you're not quite there yet?
I'm not saying that this is not. I'm not saying that my answer would be no, and I'm not saying that my answer is not fact. But I'm willing to couch my answer as an opinion at this point. Like I said, I empty myself a lot to get to understand where you guys are coming from. So I'm not trying to say, let my no answer be right, if that makes sense. Like, oh, let me ask these questions so my no answer is right. I mostly ask the questions, one, because it's available to me. Like, you would be surprised how hard it is to get these questions out in different spaces, especially even with trans people available to you. They'll say, oh, go do your own research, talk to a thing, and it's not. It's like, talk to a trans person. Like,
it's literally my job to answer these questions. Like, yes.
Yeah, they're like, you're a trans person, and I'm like, what? You know, and they'll say, ask a trans person, why are you? And I'm like, what? So for me, it's just like, well, I got the opportunity. The show is there. Just ask these questions. So I'm taking advantage of the opportunity, using it, I guess, as research, which I know it may not be like papers and all this stuff, but I think it's still part of research. So for me, like I said, I like conversation. I'm a conversationalist. So I like to kind of just open up myself to this information. Like, nothing's going to happen to me if a woman can be called a male or whatever, like, or a woman can have a penis. Like, nothing's going to, my universe is not going to explode. I'm still going to live my life, right? So I'm not afraid to get more information, but I'm really trying here to just ask questions and get answers.
Yeah, so I guess my question for you, and maybe this is something you can go home and think about, but why is it so important for you that sex and gender be in alignment? Like,
Well,
why
two
is
things
that
are important
such
to
a
me, right?
hinge point for you?
Yeah, two things are important to me, and it does affect this subject. Believe it or not, affects our culture largely, and not only that. There, it, there are snowball effects that are going to happen later on down the line. That this information is definitely going to be useful to all of us, right? So I think that
Yes,
we need to know as
here's
much of
the
it as possible. That's why
problem
we
though.
do the research.
Here's the problem though. You're like, you've done a great job, like, with how far you've come. But I know that you're saying that you empty your mind and just try to take in the information, but you're still holding on to some things that you were previously taught. And it sounds like you're unable to let those pieces go. And I'm trying to figure out
It's an art,
why
not a science,
these pieces are so tightly held by you. And this is something too, like, we in science, we dumb down things frequently. Like, the model of the atom that everybody learns in, like, grade school, it's wrong. It's wrong. We have so many things that people think this is truth. Like, I'm learning what's right, and I'm just going to add on to the things that I already knew. Well, no, because the things that we taught before they were dumbed down to help you understand, so that you can learn some more depth later. And it turns out a lot of things, like going through medical school, there's so much that I thought I knew absolutely nothing about. And I think it's cool. I think it's so cool when I said, like, this is something mind-blowing that I thought it was this thing, and that's completely wrong. And then I changed my viewpoint on it. And, like, I too, for a long time, I thought that sex and gender had to be in alignment, had to be congruent. They really don't. Like, we're taught, and I think a lot of us carry that baggage almost of being taught, like, this is how the world is. And some of us hold on to those things that we are told, this is how the world is. And it's hard to let that go and learn what is the correct thing. And so I get that you want to learn the truth, but to say, I'm going to hold on to this grade school level education until somebody can definitively, like, convince me in my level of education that this is correct. Like, it's hard to convince you of advanced science when you don't understand the fundamentals of science. It's hard enough to understand that as a physician.
I would say my education is not grade level. I do have a college degree.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that you've taken, like, higher level biology or neuroscience.
It's like the things you have to take in steps. And to say, like, let's say for me, like, I'm a physician. If I said, I don't understand how to perform brain surgery, therefore that brain surgeon doesn't know what he's talking about, and he has to convince me why his methods are correct. I'm not the authority on that. I have no experience to suggest that I should be the arbiter of that information. Like, so I get that I want to know things, but it's my responsibility then to go through the process. Like, and the process is long and it sucks, but, like, understand that you might not understand the nuance, and you might not understand, like, a whole lot of that depth. And, like, I just don't want you to hold on to things.
So I guess
just because you can't leap over, like, 4 different levels to get to that end stage.
I guess my question is, and I'm not trying to be belittling. Are these questions difficult? Like, do you guys not feel like you have the ability to answer some of the questions that I'm asking?
No, I feel like we've been
and the
thoroughly answering them multiple times repeatedly over the course of the last several months.
I guess I'm not going to, like, to not be belittling back, but I feel like we've been repeating a lot of things and simplifying it as we go, because I think we're throwing things out that are a bit too advanced in the conversation for where we're at right now. And so it's like because I think if you understood what we were talking about, you'd get that these are answers to your questions, and they're
also,
sufficient.
I think we're running into a problem here. Hold on, I want to.
Pardon?
Matthew, you were about to make a slippery slope argument about 5 minutes ago. And so I feel like you are entrenched in your beliefs about sex and gender because you are preparing to make a slippery slope argument about how this is going to be catastrophic for society somehow. And that is just objectively wrong and also kind of bigoted, which is why this is frustrating, because it feels like what you're trying to do is like the safe position of arguing the biology and the science and stuff. And we've tread this ground like 6 times with you, and we're still stuck on this same thing where you've picked some new minutia to start off the conversation with. And like you are rejecting the medical consensus that sex is a spectrum of numerous different traits if you are still clinging to your belief that trans women, you can't say that she's a woman if she has a penis or whatever, you know, like you have like a societal reason for believing something that is contrary to the science.
When Dr. Ben was explaining all these different things, I was kind of tracking. I was like, okay, I can see how from the back end, just because I don't like jump in, like I said, I'm like, okay, I see what Dr. Ben is saying there about hormones, and I could agree with that, and all these different things in brain. I feel like where I hit the wall is when this question, I feel like, and maybe you guys do answer it, but I'm asking about, we talked about identifying whether the male or female has certain genitalia. And we mentioned proprioception. We mentioned visual as well.
I can go in a lot of depth.
I don't know question.
I can go in a lot of depth about genitalia that I don't know if you're ready to handle. In all honesty, yeah. I don't know if you're ready to handle this discussion.
We have to have a phalloplasty discussion sometime. That would be so fun.
Well, yeah, but also people who are born with incongruent people who are born with incongruent anatomy. I'm curious about where you would assign some of these people and how they should be allowed to live their lives. Somebody who has, I'm going to give you one here. Have you heard much about or done much reading about androgen insensitivity?
No.
Okay, so this is a condition where usually the person is XY with an SRY gene and the additional genetic components to produce male anatomy. And they can produce testosterone to a sufficient level that we define as a male level, but their receptors do not respond to it. And so the whole male pathway of genital development in utero is testosterone and PDE5. Is that some, I can't remember all the letters, but it's testosterone and other testosterone analog dependent. So if you have all of those other components, but you don't have responsive receptors, you cannot develop that anatomy in utero. So you have phenotypically female babies. Hold on, my cat is like deciding now is the time to demand attention. But you have phenotypically female babies who are XY with high levels of testosterone, female anatomy or female external anatomy, male internal anatomy. So usually they have testes that will essentially like sit in labia. So they have male internal anatomy, female external anatomy. Usually you cannot tell that they are like genotypically male. But what happens at puberty is they're able to convert some of those hormones to where they're able to respond. Like they're able to bind to receptors that will respond. And so then they'll undergo more of a male puberty and develop more as male later on. So with that case, they would most likely not have a fully developed male tract by that point. And they would likely, depending on how obvious the condition was, could very likely be assigned female at birth. So which features are you going to, by which features are you going to assign this person to a sex, and which category will you assign them to?
Yeah, for me, I would let them, if they're privy to that information, they can say whatever they are or whatever they want to say they are. I guess I'm not the
so that person.
I'm sure if they
yeah.
Present,
so you're
as a female,
so you're allowing that person. You're allowing that person. No, hold on. So you're allowing that person to be an exception to the rule. Is that what I'm hearing here?
Oh yeah, I would say people like that are exceptions to the rule. They're
so
the
you've
exception, not the rule.
established that exceptions to the rule exist. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, 100%.
So why would you not accept trans people as exceptions?
I'm not, and like I said, this is where my mind is right now, so I have to probably like get back into that. But I'm not trying to. Not
sounds like you're dodging the point. It sounds like you're dodging the point.
It could, yeah.
You established that some exceptions exist. Why are trans people not exceptions?
Like I said, where my mindset is now, because I feel like this is a very important conversation. I have to kind of put my mind to a certain way of thinking, but I'm not trying to accept or not accept anyone. Maybe you can give me an example of a trans person trying to do something. I'm just listening to your example, and I'm trying to understand where you're coming from.
Why is that person with incongruent anatomy allowed to make the decision of what sex and or gender they are, but a trans person is not? Why do you treat these two
I think to answer your question, I think it's more because it's physical, like it's identifiable. It's more.
But didn't you just say that you weren't the?
Okay, no, Matthew, hold on. I'm sorry. I need to cut in here. Matthew, this is the premise of the question that we've been posing to you for like 8 weeks. We are saying, okay, so if we can acknowledge this person who was born with androgen insensitivity is an exception to the rule because of their physical attributes. Okay, say a trans woman who has breasts. Let's even say that she's had bottom surgery. Let's just say, she has a vagina, no functional gonads, presumably. And she looks like a woman, and like, hell, let's even say that she happens to have that SRY transposition. So she actually does have XX chromosomes. Like, why is it that you can't grant that a trans person is functionally like a non-binary sex? Like the characteristics have physically, because that's the crux of the question, right? And even if the trans woman has a penis, let's say she has breasts and smells like a woman and soft skin like a woman, like beautiful, like soft hair because of estrogen, like, why is she not an exception to the rule? Or why couldn't you say that she has the right or the ability to self-declare that she is a woman if the overwhelming majority of her features are under what we would consider female bimodal traits?
That's a good question, and I'm not saying I'm wrong or right here. I'm just saying that I'm just giving my thoughts, because I'm trying to get my mind into that. It would be, for me, because they weren't born that way.
Okay. That's a reasonable answer to the question. Yeah. I'm glad that you didn't dodge it.
I was like, I have further questions on like, why is birth? Why is that the time frame? Why does that matter? And also, additionally, previously you said that you weren't the arbiter in this, so I'm getting curious about why you think your opinion matters for any of these things. It's funny that you say, like, whenever you don't have a good response, well, no, and you say that you say that disclaimer every time you think we're gonna like push back on your answer. It's like you're not willing to own responsibility for your hot takes, but then you'll keep making these statements. So it's like you'll say, "Oh, well, I'm not the arbiter of this," or like, "I don't know as much, but here's my position that I'm going to stick to and not let go of." Like these are. I'm going to use the word incongruent. These are incongruent. Your words and your level of responsibility is incongruent from your position. And here's something that I'm going to push back just with this thing. And I don't know if Luxander wants to move on relatively soon, or how much they're interested.
We have 3 more callers, so we probably should. Should pretty soon.
But like something I want to leave with you is that every statement I make on this, every decision I make on this, I am held responsible for, because I have a medical license. I am providing care. I am doing these things. So I have stakes. There are stakes attached to the things that I say. There are people who get hurt based on the things that I say. So if I say something that I'm more confident in, you know that I'm owning up to it. And if I'm wrong, I'm owning up to it. You're dodging responsibility for any of this. So like you're wanting to make medical claims for people. You're wanting to make personal claims for people. You're wanting to make life claims and decisions for other people. Would you, if you were wrong, would you accept full responsibility for ruining somebody's life based on your decisions? And I think if not, you don't belong in this conversation.
Okay. Oh, well, I would say that, and I hear what you're saying, but I would say that a good question that was asked to me was, why is birth so important? And that's what I feel like. I feel like we're getting somewhere. I don't know what's going on.
See, that's a question, but you're dodging. You're dodging. No, you're dodging my question. You're going to answer this, and then we're going to hang up on you.
Good question.
No. Are you willing for these statements? No. No. Are you? I want you. Are you going to take accountability for the statements you're making and for the people that you could be hurting with your perspective?
Yeah, I'll take accountability for anything that I do.
Like in what sense? If you made this decision for somebody else and they got hurt, you'd be okay with that? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I would not be okay with people getting hurt under my care. And when I do provide healthcare, anything that's to do with healthcare, I'm not. In my profession, there's male and female, because we don't go beyond any type of, like, I'm not assigning anyone birth or anything like that, right? So when I'm training somebody, I'm saying, okay, I'm doing this amount of food or protein for a female versus the amount of protein for a male. It's very different. So those things are very easy for me to kind of.
May I ask real quick? I'm sure we're leaving this soon. May I ask what your credentials are? Like, what is your job? What are your credentials?
Yeah, I'm a certified personal trainer, behavior change specialist, nutrition coach, weight loss coach.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of bullshit.
Everything that you do has to do with hormones, like female and male hormones. Yeah. Like trans women are treated like females in these situations.
And there's also a lot of bullshit in the personal training industry and in the health coaching industry. It's like, if you were a dietitian, we'd have more of a conversation. But I can, if you're making these decisions and you think that these personal training decisions are the same to the stakes of making a medical decision for somebody, like, you can absolutely fuck off. And I think we're done with this call.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same.
Okay, Matthew, we're gonna move on. I want to encourage you to call back in the future about whatever slippery slope societal problem that you think there is, because I feel like that's really, the point where we're getting kind of hung up on, that you keep trying to call back about like neuroscience and all these different things. But I want to know next time. I'll be here next week with Arden. I want to know in the future, like, what would be bad for society about acknowledging that trans women are women, or that they have female characteristics. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for calling. I do feel like we could be having a productive direction to this conversation. So I'm not hanging up on you today. Thank you for calling, Matthew.
I did.
You hung up on him. Oh, okay. You took the power away. That's okay.
I did. It was my male privilege.
Yeah.
It was my male privilege. No. It's just when he was bringing personal training into it, and like, there's so much pseudoscience and bullshit.
Oh, there is
that people use, and there's a lot of stuff that he was saying that is not scientifically valid about like male versus female, like nutritional standards. So.
Like, okay,
and
females
right.
have a higher rate of this or whatever. Like, it is more like hormone based anyway.
It's hormone. Yep.
So like, okay, whatever. Anyway, God. Okay, hold on. I just need a second. Okay, we're good. Just everybody always says like, oh, we're so patient with these people. It's like, you have no idea how much I am coping and seething on the inside.
Oh yeah.
Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Did you know we saw what you were doing when you watched it?
We saw all of it. All of it. All of it.
So you're going to want to pay us hush money over at patreon.com/calltheline, where you can buy our silence and watch our patron exclusive podcast.